Happy holidays and welcome to another edition of the Newark Citizen. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Chris Burnett.
Hello. Hello.
Long time no see.
Long time.
I know. We've been on a holiday.
Holiday break?
I guess so. and to my left here, I have the great assemblyman. He's taking Anton Willer. Anton Willer has a little event at his school in Irvington, and so last minute I called my brother over here, Al Cortino, Assemblyman Al Cortino, and from the 29th District, and he actually said yes, so thanks a lot, man.
It's great to be here.
I appreciate it, man.
Always good to see you.
Yeah, okay.
And Dr. Purnell as well.
So do we have to, you don't have to wear this tie and stuff, we kind of.
Well, it's the holiday season. I take advantage to everybody. Happy holidays.
I know you're kind of overdressed.
Whatever you do celebrate, I wish you happy holidays. Obviously there's a lot of events going on, and but it's always a pleasure to sit down about important issues for the city. So any opportunity I have, I always try to make myself available.
Don't get all robotic on us in business. This is
I get it.
Comfortable show here.
We're a comfortable show. So I'll undo my job.
Yeah, that's right. We feel better, right, Doc?
Right.
Listen, I had to convince her, so don't feel bad. She was wearing suits too. So I wanted to, there were a few issues we wanted to address. And the first one is the child poverty. There was a article that came out, I think it was yesterday it came out. That research was done by the nonprofit Advocates for Children of New Jersey that says that child poverty in the city of Newark spiked by 32% from 2009 to 2010. That is extreme spike in poverty. Now, for years, I have been stating that a big, one of the reasons why I have been so protective of public jobs in the city, and trying to get elected officials to be mindful that over the years, because they allow for manufacturing and other jobs to leave the city, that the only jobs in the city that are really left, the jobs that actually pay decent money, are the public sector jobs. And now, within the last, I would say probably since Cory Booker, I'm being honest, since Booker has come into power, we've lost a lot of public jobs within the city of Newark. And so it's not really that surprising to me that child poverty has increased. It's not surprising that the average household income has now fallen to $27,000. With kids, because there are these other jobs that they're replacing them with. They aren't living wage jobs. And so I just want to ask, are any of you shocked by that? And what do we have to do to change that?
Doctor, ladies first.
Sure.
You just like Anton.
But it's saddening, but it's not shocking. It's a symptom of a larger systemic problem. What we see still happening in our urban environments, and particularly what's happening for minority communities in our urban environment, that they are experiencing the economic downturn, let's say at an nth degree, that we're seeing across the country nationally. And so what we have here is a tight microcosm, like a tight microscope looking at the problems that are happening in the city of Newark. And what I thought was so profound about the article that's posted here in NJ.com is that it pulls out this issue of almost, I'm going to call it a poverty economy, the economy around poverty. It's because when you have a lack of jobs, when you have a lack of resources, how that impacts a child's education, how that impacts a child's well-being. So I think if anything, it's just given us a razor focus of what we need to do to actually jumpstart the economy, specifically locally. Public sector jobs have been a huge employer of, let's say, urban environments, and since public sector jobs have been slashed, the question then becomes, what has the administration done, or what are elected officials and what are business people doing to re-employ and to re-engage these citizens? Otherwise, the children who are the most vulnerable will be the hardest hit.
Wow, here's the problem I have with the, and I don't want to just blame this on Cory, because it's not the book administration, because clearly this is beyond the book administration. I've actually been talking about this issue for quite some time. Actually, since I first got into labor, when I start realizing that the only real jobs that like we were all scrambling for the same positions, right? And that the only real jobs were these public sector. That's why people were eating their young. They were killing their old, you know what I'm saying? Because they wanted to replace them in those jobs because there's only, but I'm trying to find out what happened to elected leadership, the leaders in this town over the last, I gotta be real with you. I'm probably gonna say to you probably about 30 years. What we've allowed for it to get to a point where that we replace home ownership, business ownership, and certain communities, because most of this impacts the minority communities, where we replace that with putting people into these public sector jobs, and yet now the time has come where these public sector jobs aren't sustainable anymore, and there's nothing that's they're replacing with. When we say that the dairy company is coming, or these little warehouse companies, they're not paying living wage jobs. None of them are paying jobs that would take you out of poverty.
Well, let me say this. This is such a huge issue, and to be honest, we could do an entire show just on this. I'm Chair of Commerce and Economic Development in the Assembly, and I deal with this issue, obviously statewide, and it is a major, major issue, and let me just start by saying it's not the least bit surprising. The reality is, and without giving local officials, let's say, a pass, this goes way beyond the local economy. We are in the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression, and that's true of the city, the state, the country, and actually even internationally. We see crisis in Europe, etc. But in terms of what matters most to us here in Newark, we have to take a look at how can we try to get out of it. And without even giving further bad news, my concern is that all the prospects is you're going to see a continuing shrinkage of government across the country, and the state of New Jersey and Newark will not be immune from that. So we have serious issues that need to be addressed. Now, if we want to just, without me boring everybody with some macro issues which are international in scope and even national, in terms of locally, I do think that there has been, we have failed to capitalize on some opportunities that do exist here. There has been too much of a focus on public sector jobs. I agree with you. Newark has a tremendous asset, and that is its transportation infrastructure. We are in the middle of the biggest part of this country, which is Boston to Washington. We're smack in the middle of it. We're 12 miles from New York City, and we need to maximize the logistics sector. When you look at why the poverty numbers are where they are, it's because we have sustained high unemployment. And obviously with shrinking of the public sector where we are overly dependent, that makes it worse. But our unemployment numbers are double the state average. And minority communities are disproportionately affected by this downturn. And even there, not to be overly negative, but the facts are showing, for example, the construction industry, which is blue-collar jobs, which our residents could be part of, and is very much a part of the Newark story. We are looking, it's going to be until 2015 until there's a vibrant construction season. So what is it that could be done and I think should have been done? When you look at Port Newark, that is a positive spot. There's a lot of good things going on. I fought together, when we got Governor Christie and the Port Authority to fix the Bayonne Bridge problem, so we're going to be able to continue to have a vibrant port. We need to, local elected leaders need to do more to get Newark residents into Port Newark. Port Newark supports 270,000 direct and indirect jobs, and not enough of Newarkers are there. Also, we need to leverage the port and the transportation and logistics sector. We should be having warehousing jobs where somebody with a minimal amount of job training, even if they don't go to college, can work in a warehouse. They can drive a truck. For those that are home and watching this and you're thinking, where am I going to get a job? If you have a CDL license, there still are jobs available within the trucking industry. So there are some opportunities. So what I would agree with you on the local level is that we have not identified and taken full advantage of this great asset, which is Newark's transportation infrastructure.
Wow, I think.
But we have the airport, we have the port, we have rail,
but then
we have the roads.
but that still is. I'm sorry, but that's still. It's not enough to employ Newark's unemployed. I do hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you that we haven't, leveraged the port and the airport the way we should leverage it, right? Especially for the good paying jobs. We've gotten little bull crapping jobs out of, these places. Well, except for longshoremen. Longshoremen is actually a good job. But, definitely in the airport, we're baggage handlers, we're food service handlers, we working in the, little vendors inside the airport. So I don't disagree with you that we haven't leveraged those jobs well. But I just think that, two things. That one, and probably going to get deep into, if have time, get deep into the link with Cammie Anderson and Lincoln education.
Right.
Or rather,
That's very
once
important.
again, their naiveness, not believing that poverty has impact on education. But when we're dealing with jobs in the city, when we're trying to train people, why aren't we just being real with folks and letting them know that, to be honest with you, we may have to give them a skill where they can go get a job elsewhere, right? And the problem, what we tend to do here is, it's this, this block love, this neighborhood love, that we can't find a job outside of, our neighborhood. I know neighborhoods where, we got mother, father, grandparent, whatever, all living in the same vicinity. And then we looking for jobs in that same vicinity. And the problem to me is, like, we haven't really, one of the reasons why our unemployment is so high, and one of the reasons why we're unemployed, because we're not even training them to get skills to actually take jobs elsewhere. I mean, I think we should develop programs, and if we give people a CDL license, they don't have to have a job in Jersey. If we give people a repair training class, they don't have to have a job in Jersey. If we give people a boiler license, they don't have to have. If we teach people how to do HVAC, if we teach people, do you know, even with cable company, if you train people to install cable, and if you had your own van, you can actually be a subcontractor to the cable companies and turn around here and get business doing jobs. We're not dealing with mobile.
Well, Rock, here's
jobs. We're not teaching people to migrate.
You're right on this, and again, maybe you go back to the focus has been too much on just trying to have public sector jobs and not trying to engage the marketplace, see where there are opportunities, and then shape programs to train people for that. But
you don't think that's
how many
leadership?
warehouses there are on exit 8A on the Turnpike,
right.
And we have Newark residents that actually go down there to work. So we should have, for example, when we had a lot of available land, we still have plenty of available land, make it a priority to try to attract warehousing jobs, because those are jobs that Newarkers can be part of. I've been working really hard on some big projects with tax credits. We have Panasonic coming to Newark. We have Prudential's going to do another office tower. But unfortunately, most Newark residents aren't going to be able to get those management level jobs. There is going to be a benefit to the city in terms of revenue that's going to come in. There's revenue going to come in and help the city budget. But unfortunately, we have to try to see what we can do. This is a national issue. How do we get jobs for folks who don't have a college education? We need to get more people into college, but it's a major national issue. I believe in infrastructure investment, fixing the roads, the waterways, the sewer lines, the green economy. We need to create jobs and focus, put political pressure to create jobs for those people who don't have a college education, because unfortunately, too high of a percentage of Newark residents don't even graduate high school. Forget about them having a college degree. So it is a long-term challenge, and we need to focus on what can we do to get the private sector to employ our citizens.
But Doc, if a 32% spike in a year's time, I mean, and I'm saying this is, and if you read the article, it's a direct link to the layoffs and the jobs that's being. I'm saying. And as Al's saying, that's not a trend that's going to stop anytime soon. That is actually a trend that's going to continue. But we're not. To me, it's still this culture.
That's what I was going to say.
That the public job is the lottery.
You have to get at the culture,
right?
Because what's happening right now is we have a generation gap, and what I mean by that is we are not training our citizens to be competitive for the jobs that are going to be the most high yield, the most profitable. They're not even being exposed to, let's say, developing the skills and the talents that would allow them to be employed for those jobs. We have to get at this culture that you need to be employed at home. The culture should be that you need to be as competitive as possible, whether you have a college degree or not, whether your competitiveness is coming by a trade or whether your competitiveness is coming by a specific professional skill, that we can look elsewhere to find places of employment. But what's more important, I think, for us to really talk about, which you kind of skirted here, but let's get back to, is the issue of, in the face of poverty, can we educate our children?
Right.
And what responsibility do we have to our children in the face of poverty? And is it naive to say that, I believe the superintendent, Cammie, said that we look directly at leadership. School leadership can compensate for, let's say, poverty. And the school leadership is, despite these kids being raised in a neighborhood and environment where they have decreased resources and parents unemployed, that they can still be educated. And so the other spectrum of that argument is going to be, but is poverty too overwhelming of an issue that it's almost.
So what would you
hope.
say, that you don't think so?
I don't think poverty is too overwhelming of an issue.
I mean, that's why I
there's no hope.
disagree.
No, but let me finish.
All
It
right.
can't be too overwhelming of an issue
I'm
where
sorry,
there's
but
no
it
help.
is.
No, poverty is implicated in every aspect of life, yes. But despite being poor, we don't have the time to let these children languish
but it's
while we wait for an economy to turn around,
But those
while
are-
we wait
Doc.
for people to be trained to be employed in better jobs. We have to be aggressive in both ends.
But Doc,
That's basically what I'm saying.
Doc, those are good sound bites. It sounds
No.
good for the camera. It sounds good to put into the papers. It sounds good for elected officials to get up there and make those things. It sounds good for superintendents to make those remarks. But I haven't seen the results. And I'm saying to you that the state has made that claim since 1995.
But
You got to
Rock,
understand
it is
that.
about leadership, Rock.
Hold on for a minute now, because I need to make this point. The state of New Jersey came in here in 1995 because they said the kids were not being educated.
Right.
They said the exact same thing
Right.
that Cammie Anderson and every superintendent before her that the state brought up in here said. What she's saying is not unique. What Cory Booker saying is not unique. The state since 1995 has been in control of the school system, and their mantra has been that money isn't the solution and that we can't allow for poverty not to educate our kids. And I'm saying to you that since 1995, that's almost 20 years, that this board, the state has been in control of the Board of Education, and they have yet to see results. And I'm saying it's because that poverty does impact education.
No one's discounting that, but that's a different issue of whether or not state versus local control. When I say leadership, I'm going to talk about at the micro level. I'm talking about the school leaders, the principals that you have at that school, the teachers that are in front of those students. There are poor people all throughout the world who are still getting educated. And
I don't disagree with that.
And so if we allow our poor children in urban environments, and particularly our poor children here in Newark, not to get a quality education because of the consequences of an economic downturn, then we all will be liable. We all will be accountable for that. It has to come at both ends.
But Doc, they haven't been getting educated before the downturn. Well, poverty existed before the downturn in our communities, by the way.
Yes,
poverty, in other communities, they just starting to experience poverty. We've always had poverty here.
So,
Rock,
a few things on this, because again, this is another huge issue, which is a whole nother full program worth of information. Socioeconomic issues, poverty is very much a reality in part of the educational complexities in our system. We can't allow people to say that it isn't. However, and I agree with Dr. Purnell here, we can't allow it to be excuse to not educate the kids. You know what? It gets thrown in my face in Trenton every single day. How much is enough? The state sends $715 million a year here, Rock. Now, I'm not saying, that's a lot of money. We spend over $900 million in Newark Public
They also
Schools.
occupy a lot of property that they don't pay taxes on. That's in prime real estate too. They don't say nothing about that.
We need the resources to properly educate the kids. But I think in so much is talked about education reform, and I do think, though, if you focus on leadership, you can, even with all the socioeconomic problems, you can have results.
They've been doing it since 95.
No. Wait a minute. Forget about the state.
We're
Wait a minute.
focused on leadership.
Forget about the state.
School principals.
If you have great principals, because here's what I will tell you. You look at Harriet Tubman, you look at Abington Avenue School, you look at Ann Street, we have, forget about high-performing charters, we have general population schools that are blue ribbon schools. You know why? Because there's a great principal in that school who gets the most out of each and every teacher, who engages the parents, and the parents are active. Okay? So it can work. Even in the most distressed environments, the soundbite, as you would say, education is the hope. That is the way out. Okay? But if you can focus on getting great leadership in every school building, if you get a great principal, and I think, all the debate on this, I believe you need to develop great principals, develop great teachers, and give them the resources to do their jobs, without question.
Schools like Harriet Tubman.
Don't use it as an excuse for
failure. I'm not saying that because, of course, we want the kids to be educated, but schools because when people use places like Harriet Tubman, it angers me, and here's why. Harriet Tubman was that type of school when I was a kid. Harriet Tubman became a magnet school where people took kids from all over the city whose parents wanted to, because Harriet Tubman was considered a school where people went to school and actually did the work. They use it as a magnet school where wherever you're in the city, you go get the superintendent, whoever you go to, you can bring your kid, your concerned parent. You get hold on for a minute. I'm saying, so if you put any school, if you put any, I'm not saying that, but what I'm trying to say to you, that if you create any school where the majority of the parents that's a part of that school are either working parents, they are either parents that's concerned about their child education, then that kid is going to learn into that environment. And I'm saying that, unfortunately, the majority of our schools don't have that. And I'm saying to you, when I was at Harriet Tubman back in the 70s, they had so many of us on the honor roll. They had 3 honor rolls: the honor roll, the super honor roll, and the super duper honor roll. I was on the super duper honor roll. You know what I'm saying?
not surprised.
I'm serious. I graduated Harriet Tubman on the super duper honor roll, and that's in the 70s. So what I'm trying to say to you is that every school in the city of Newark, in New Jersey, don't have it. I told you, use me as an example. Listen, I always tell people, hey, I'm a perfect example of the story of what not having a stable home, not having a father into the house. So when we were in school, my stepfather was alive, when we had stability in the household, we were great students. At the point that my stepfather passed away, we no longer had that figure in the house. We no longer had a stable household because, you know what I'm saying, issues that my mom was going through at the time. All of us, after my father passed away, screwed up in education. All of us. All of us. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying to you that poverty does, I'm an example that poverty does impact that. And it bothers me when I hear, and that was back then. You know, that was back then when things weren't as bad as it now. Right now, we got kids that walk past gang members every day.
They walk past.
It's an issue, but it can't be an excuse.
Right.
And I'm not saying it should be an excuse.
But my fear is, and what my concern is that we discount kids who are currently poor. We say, because you live in a poor environment, because you live in an unstable home, you're not going to be able to get the best out of education. And that's not what I'm saying. But that's how people are taking it. There are people discounting a whole generation of kids because they're growing up in poor conditions.
So, in summary of this, because I know you have a big program, it's definitely a tremendous factor. We have to fight to make sure resources are there, but don't have it be an excuse for failure, because if you have parental support, you have good leadership in the schools, these kids can and will excel.
So in contradictory to the issue that we talked, in the same week, we had another article that came out that was written that says Newark has renaissance. So 1 minute, you know, we have high poverty in a year, and then in the next article, Newark is in a renaissance. We had people in the last 10 years, we had 4,000 more people, which I actually believe they were already here. They just was undercounted the last time. But because, you know, there was a push to make sure they got counted this time, right? The census just added that we have this renaissance. Now, I don't know nobody who's rushing here to move in the city of Newark because of this so-called renaissance. So I'm trying to understand the hypocrisy of the fact that at one point we had double unemployment. Our poverty is at 30. The median household is at $22,000 for income. We have this, you know what I'm saying, high poverty. The kids aren't being educated in school, to the point of now we have this renaissance where we have a busload of people running to the city.
I can actually, you know what, because I was familiar, before going to the legislature, I was on the planning and zoning board. The explanation is actually pretty clear for this. And I would tell you this not to be negative, but all of this increase was actually from the earlier part of the decade. Remember, this is from 10 years ago. The last 5 years, to be honest, I believe the population started to go down again because of foreclosures and things of that nature. What happened was, early on in the decade, when the housing boom was still going strong, Mayor James had the land program where we were giving away houses, giving land to developers to build housing. There was a construction boom early in the decade, and with a lot of easy money from Washington, you know, to basically allow for home ownership, there was a lot of new housing done in Newark. Not only the East Ward had a lot, but even in the South Ward and the West Ward through Mayor James's program. If you look at the last 4 years, housing has basically come to a screeching halt. Okay, so that's what happened. What happened? No. Well, I'm telling you, somebody who's on the ground in this regard. Basically, I do think the Booker administration, and I work with them, and they've done some good things. They came in and they sort of told developers, what you're building is bad. What was that?
Can you name 2 things that the Booker administration did?
Positive things. I think the parks has been good progress, and there had been some progress in crime, which unfortunately now we've further down.
The crime stopped.
All right. So anyway,
you couldn't name 2.
But the explanation for the population increase was the housing expansion early on in the decade with a lot of easy money, and coupled with the city's program, been a continued expansion of our university sector with Rutgers Newark, NJIT, which has also created some central ward. This created some central ward development as a direct relationship to the university expansion. So when you look at, the East Ward as an example, we had old factories that got knocked down and replaced them with 3-family homes. Again, the land program was all multifamily, 2- and 3-family homes throughout different sectors of the city. So that's why I believe the population increased. And, sure enough, there have been, the successes in the city of Newark in terms of, getting some economic development with be it NJPAC or the Prudential Arena. So there, you do get some positive activity. The airport continues strong. A lot of people who live, let's say, have their second apartments in Newark because they work at the airport. So an expansion of the airport together with those factors have created that. And there was enough stability where crime wasn't as bad, as some other areas. But the key was when you compare us to East Orange and Irvington or Roselle, is that we have jobs here. We do have some jobs here. Not as many as we would like, but there are jobs, there are some jobs here in Newark, and that has allowed Newark to grow versus some other cities which are really struggling and hemorrhaging.
So Doc,
But
right now,
let me get to.
are they knocking the doors down and getting Newark? No, I'm just curious.
Doc Purnell is a new
Are they knocking the doors down?
Myself as an example. There is a segment of the minority professional community that is looking for a place to resettle and a place to reclaim. And I can tell you that people like myself, I've heavily recruited other individuals like myself who grew up nearby Newark, grew up in Newark, went abroad for training, went abroad for jobs, and came back deliberately to Newark because we believed in what Newark represented to our parents or to our grandparents. So I can speak to my neighborhood in Forest Hills. It is a booming neighborhood. It's a house culture. So you have the New York Times advertising, look at Forest Hills, get a more affordable house, get more money for your dollar. You see what I'm saying? So you're going to look at it differently. There will be some people moving to Newark, but our poor people running to Newark, our working class families running to Newark, no outside of immigrant populations. You will notice that I can even tell you on the outskirts of where I live and going into the Central Ward, that Newark is becoming even more diverse. Just looking at the Latino population, where before it may have been heavily Puerto Rican, or now we're moving into Dominican, Ecuadorians, Guatemalans, there is an expansion, there is a growth, there is a vibrancy that is coming in. I don't even think this number accurately reflects the diversity that can be found in certain enclaves in Newark. I think there are a lot of people who are undocumented and uncounted, but if you walk around, you talk, and you see, Newark for a decent amount of people still represents opportunity. Is it a small window of opportunity? Yes, because we're in an economic downturn, but it does represent an opportunity. When I can walk around my neighborhood and I can look across the street, around the corner, and up the block, and literally live in a more diverse environment than I've ever lived in my life, that is attributed to the fact that a certain type of leadership attracted a certain type of person to reconsider Newark. You can't deny that.
And listen, I love to hear proud Newarkers, you know what I'm saying, like yourself, you know what I'm saying, say how happy you are to be living in the city. I mean, I was born and raised in the city, so I mean,
I'm born, raised, and a lifelong resident, and you know what, we have tremendous challenges, but Newark is the best city of the state of New Jersey. We have to fight to make it all it can be, and I believe we can if we properly, we fix our education system, if we take advantage of the opportunities that are here, attract more businesses here through tax incentives and aggressive recruitment. We need to make sure, a big issue, we need to maximize the presence of colleges. We have more college students in Newark than New Brunswick. People don't know that. Yes. This issue of UMD&J is one of the biggest issues that, unfortunately the community isn't, quite up to speed on how critical it is, and, it's something that has us, all elected officials, extremely concerned. In fact, one of the things early on in the year in January probably is going to be a need for, local demonstrations. We're going to make sure that your program has information for that so the community could show up, because that is a critical thing. And not to, again, go back, one positive thing in this regard that the Booker administration did do, they did open up Continental Airlines. Continental Airlines did start hiring a lot more Newarkers. I would have liked to have seen more of that, and we haven't done it in the port, which I think we
Sharp James did that with Continental. I mean, that's not new. Okay, he couldn't name two, but come to Newark.
Come to Newark.
Come to Newark. Another issue. There was little disagreement with the Occupy movement last week. There, with the folks that came into town to occupy Military Park. A lot of us went to Occupy and to support them and what they were doing. We set up tents. When we first was told that there was a ban on tents, we stood against the ban. Raz Baraka came out, pitched his tent. We slept there. But then we seen an element that was coming over into the park that we didn't agree with. And we had asked them if they would, could we form a code of conduct? They had these GAs. I got a bunch of issues with where this movement is going, right? I mean, I like the movement, but I have some issues on where the movement's going. Or why hasn't gone there already. But we asked that they, create a code of conduct, or that they vote on a code of conduct. They didn't want to vote on a code of conduct. And so we rebelled against them, for not pushing, voting on the code of conduct. We went to the council and asked the council to hold off on lifting the ban until, they approved a code of conduct, which they eventually actually did, and the council lifted the ban. But I did want the public to, understand that, because, there's this notion that somehow we were upset that we weren't the leaders and, they didn't give us speaking time. And I mean, that is just the furthest from the truth. We were down there with them. We were standing against the police, trying to remove them from the park. We wanted them to be there, but I don't think that anyone should allow for people who are supposed to be about change in a movement to come into our town and utilize the park for activities that we don't think should be going on in activities. I mean, if we're going to camp out in the activities, and we're going to ask the police to stay away from the encampment, then we have to be the people who police the encampment. We have to make sure that when folks come here that, there are certain things that they cannot do in the park. And why should we allow for outside elements to come think that they can camp out in our park and utilize whatever substance or do whatever they want in our park and give us this type of bad? Why do we want that in a movement? Why would any movement want that? Chris?
We don't want it. But what you see happening with all of the Occupy movements, because it was just so organic, it happened and it organized in the moment. This also, I believe, happened in Atlanta when Congressman John Lewis wanted to go in to speak at one of the Occupy camps, and they were like, well, we don't really need you to speak. This is a decentralized movement. This is from the people. The people are going to be able to address their demands. What is important for me at any time is that whenever we have civil disobedience, that we're accountable in our civil disobedience. And in being accountable in our civil disobedience is that we're upholding a standard for what we're fighting for, right? At one point, it seemed to me that people were it was becoming trendy almost to start an Occupy camp. It's like, okay, where's the next place we can start an Occupy camp?
Exactly.
Let's go start an Occupy camp. What I think the more sophisticated or savvy thing to do is to say, what are the specific local demands in this area? And that's going to demand that you engage, community leaders, community activists, whomever, common people on the street to see what is pressing, what is your concern, and how can we raise that to a level of urgency. I don't think we've done that enough. The movement has been too generic. It hasn't been specific enough to the demands of the citizens in that particular place, as well as speaking to the larger demands that are going on naturally.
They want to be generic too, by the way. It's crazy when you talk to them.
Yeah, I would tell you, in terms of the whole Occupy movement, I agree with Dr. Purnell. Look, the public being involved and voicing their discontent, I mean, that's healthy. But I do think that you do have to have rules and regulations, and people have to be respectful of others' rights and what have you. And if I can, I believe that the Occupy movement has misfired somewhat because it is a little bit too disorganized. And even without Occupy, we have a healthy dose of protesters, constant, let's say activists, community activists here. And one of the conversations I have with them on a regular basis, we have professional protesters.
We do.
We do. So it's sort of funny that, our protesters saying, you guys don't know what you're doing. We'll tell you how to do it. But I even tell our professional protesters, instead of having disorganized, wild anger. We need to have organized, righteous indignation, and come up with things that you believe should be done, need to be done, and then advocate and fight for that. Rock actually had a great quote in the paper on one of these Occupy stories was, people have to occupy the voting booth.
Right.
One of the ways people need to be engaged. I don't understand why the Occupy movement hasn't focused in
but they don't believe in that.
On Tea Party Congress people who are blocking President Obama's
But they don't believe it because they think Obama's the
believe
problem too. They don't believe in that. I'm telling you, I have this debate. I go down there, from time to time, and try to talk to them. One, you got, first of all, you got two groups down there, right? You got a young group of college kids who, want to go down and they idealistic and, they try and do something. And then you got this older group who seem like they missed the hippie era, and they trying to recreate that, and they mixed in with these young kids, whatever. And unfortunately, to me, that's what actually has corrupted the movement. But the problem, though, is that the more you try to talk to them, I had a debate with one of them one time, and we were debating about the machine. I said, so what's the machine? And they started saying the people. I said, well, there's nobody in this city who's in the 1%. So who are you talking about? And so then they start saying, well, the government is the problem, and that's the machine. And I said, but do you think you're going to change government? And they say, yeah. And I'm like, what do you? If you're not changing government within the system that's created, if you believe that democracy in this country is going to change, what are you replacing it with? If you believe that for some reason that you're going to change the voting with mic check, or if you believe that people are going to be elected based on this and based on that, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. And it seems like that's what the movement is saying. And I know folks will give them time to come around, and I hear that, but I don't think we have time. You know what I'm saying? I think that the Tea Party and them have gotten to the point where they are organized to move this country and push an agenda that is not going to benefit any of us. And the problem we have is that we actually have a movement out there that could turn into a movement similar to the Tea Party, but they're not only ready to fight them, they're actually ready to fight Obama too.
Right.
And to me, that's dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Because we actually need them on our side, right? We have to have some clear, cohesive message, and you can't get everything you want. I mean, they have, it's funny because we was debating with this rap. We was like, it's funny how you say you don't have leaders, but then when you come around to the thing, there's leader in the, you don't call them a leader. Right? But we got leaders.
It's de facto.
Right. It's de facto. Right. So what is it? Right? So I mean, the problem to me is it has to grow up. Right? And the folks that's a part of the movement has to grow up. And as much as I support the movement, at some point, if it doesn't change very soon, then it's just going to turn a lot of. If it's going to all be about jumping in front of streets, jumping in front of cars, you know what I'm saying? Then I'm telling you right now, that's going because I don't mind doing that. Listen, I support that, by the way. I'm with jumping in the street. I'm with, challenging the. I'm with all of that, right? But at least let me have an agenda to say this is why I'm doing it. I really don't know why they're doing it. I mean, I do agree with them.
If you don't have an agenda, how do you know when you secured progress?
Right. What's the goal?
How do you
how do we stop it?
Yeah, what is their desired outcome? That's
right.
The whole
What's
thing.
The outcome?
And I understand maybe not trying to have a structure so that it could spread, but at a certain point then you have to organize. You have to know, to the extent that, let's say, it's the 1% versus 99, it's about income disparity, well, then start to identify some solutions and some ideas on how do you go about doing that. Just don't be angry. Be righteous about it and saying, this is what we should be doing. This is a situation where, for example, in New Jersey, I was a sponsor of the millionaire's tax because while, we do need to share sacrifice and, we all know about the pension and benefit battle where we asked public employees to pay more because they had to. We couldn't sustain it or we were going to lay off even more folks. But then why not ask millionaires to do their share as well? And that's what I believe. They need to come up with a plan and then begin to advocate for it, or else, to be honest with you, they'll even lose support from people who do agree with the argument.
Right.
Every single poll, and unfortunately politicians always talk about polls, the support for increasing the millionaire's tax in New Jersey, I think it's 78%. It's through the off the charts. So what we have to do is stay on message and have.
And it's like, how do you get that movement to focus just on that issue, and then once they win that issue, say we won an issue. And I'm saying that has to go, and I'm hoping that they that they go, we move into that direction. Just one more quick issue and y'all don't have to, address it too much. We don't have to address it, and that's Richard Whitten. Unfortunately, it's found out yesterday that Richard Whitten pled guilty to tax evasion. And I hate to see it with Richard, because I think that Richard Whitten has been in activism. Richard has done so much in the community, and to see that occur, is hurtful to me. And I'm just hoping that the kid doesn't do any jail time, and he just let off on a fine, and but to see that tarnish his relationship, his image is just bad, because people ready to pounce on him already, right? And here's a guy who, I'm telling you, he's tirelessly worked in his community for years, and I'm saying that what he pled guilty for, I know for a fact that is done all the time. All the time.
Well, all I want to say is obviously to thank Richard for so much he's done for the city of Newark. As you said, he's been a tremendous activist, and I hope it works out for the best. And it's quite unfortunate. And hopefully, I think that all the good he's done should weigh in his favor when the sentencing comes up. And all I can say is I wish him the very best. And he has been a tremendous asset for the city of Newark, and hopefully it works out the best way possible.
I second that.
Well, yeah, really.
You said we'd have to
if
say
y'all want
much.
to talk about it, we wish him the
The
best.
only other thing I'm going to say is, people, we shouldn't. I don't think it's any of our roles to judge others. We need to be thankful, and to go about that. As far as I know, Richard has done only positive things for the city of Newark, and again, I wish him all the best. And it's not really our position to judge, and nobody should be throwing stones.
Well, they are, but hoping everything works out for Richard and he doesn't get any time for something that is, one, to be honest with you, the city bears responsibility for. They shouldn't allow for anybody to put 99 exemptions in their payroll check. That doesn't.
It's a little jealous.
Of course. You know what I'm saying? The fact that you even allow for that to happen, to me, is a problem. And I'm saying that is something that's done on a
I hope
regular
this
basis.
will become a learning point for others.
Well,
but
I hope so
unfortunately,
too.
I don't hope Richard doesn't have to suffer much for it.
So, before we leave, I just wanted to, let you know about a business that just opened up on Broad Street, Hair Masters Unisex Salon. It's at 895 Broad Street. We want to try to identify businesses for us to support. This is a new shop, so if you ever get a chance, stop at the Hair Masters to get your. You go to Black Barbershop to get your haircut?
I've been there.
Portuguese barbershop to get your haircut?
No. Actually, I have a friend of mine in Elizabeth, but it's a long story.
He used that, what they call it, that float thing.
No, I do the Portuguese barbershops, usually most in the Iron Man. I always keep my hair short, but I'll check it out.
Listen, happy holidays, everybody. I want to thank my guests, Dr. Chris Parnell and Albert Cortino, Assemblyman Albert Cortino. I really do appreciate the fact that you took my call. Well, you always take my call, but I really appreciate the fact that you came down on the last minute to replace Anton. And listen, don't be a stranger, because we can bring you back with Anton into.
I'd love to come back, and you've more than earned my respect. You're a tremendous labor leader and a tremendous activist for the community, as is Dr. Purnell. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, listen, thanks a lot. We'll see you next year. Hopefully, Happy New Year, and everybody be safe. Thanks a lot.
Go well.